All right, it is time. It is time for Andrew's first impressions of the most controversial anime of the summer 2023 anime season. Yes, the one that hit all of the folks on the social medias that this is problematic. The show that makes the outrage have to acknowledge the existence of what is called a short stack, which is, yes, real people. I'm sorry. Just like with Izaki-chan, yes, there are people with this stature. Literally the biggest controversy in the history of anime. Let's just be perfectly clear. Because even as I'm watching this series, I'm like, there's nothing even bad in here. It's not even ecchi. I mean, I can almost give you some sort of credit if it actually had ecchi. It doesn't. This is the most safe, wholesome, well, yeah, it's at times getting risque, workplace rom-com you can find out there. But with all that said, and all of the making fun of the controversy, let's jump into my first impressions of the first 3 episodes of My Tiny Senpai, a series that is airing in the summer 2023 anime season. Let's jump into it. My Tiny Senpai opens up with a guy named Shinozaki who's going to work at this office. And his senpai is Katase, who is very short, very cute, and very stacked. But that's not all she has going for her. And yes, while Shinozaki really does find her attractive, there's a key thing that makes her kind of special. Katase really likes doting on her kohais. Yes, Shinozaki is her first kohai, so she goes way out of her way to make sure that he's praised for the good work that he does, and that he has everything that he needs in order to be successful. And yes, this doesn't fall on deaf ears for Shinozaki. He really does appreciate everything that Katase does for him. And what kind of follows this is this kind of blossoming relationship between the two of them in the workforce. Everything that Shinozaki kind of faces and how Katase sort of helps him with it. All the while, their feelings for each other starts to kind of blossom into an actual relationship. Very quickly in the first episode, you get a sense that both of them sort of acknowledge each other. As Shinozaki offers his coat to Katase, she starts to get doki doki over it. And this isn't something that everybody else is oblivious to. All of their co-workers seem to acknowledge that the two of them are starting to have feelings for each other. The most out of all of them is their actual manager, Akina, who pretty much at every opportunity sends them out together to work on a project. All the while watching from a distance, hoping that something blossoms between the two of them. You know, most workplaces, they kind of discourage relationships, but this guy's like all over being Cupid. And that's sort of the gist of the show itself, just little scenarios between the two of them, like one scene where Katase accidentally drops her pen underneath his desk, and he comes showing up right when she's trying to get it from underneath his desk, and so, yes, question marks, offering massages to each other, eating out together, doing the crane game, and yes, like I said before, all the usual trope scenarios like the umbrella scene, and getting sick after the rain, and having to help them out when they're sick, those kind of things come up. It's all in kind of good nature in the idea that you see this obvious romance between the two of them, the appreciation they have for each other, and yes, the adorableness that is Katase. So my thoughts on My Tiny Senpai. I'm honestly a little bit disappointed in this series. Now, first face value, yes, it really does seem like this is a show that is a workplace rom-com, which I always appreciate. I do appreciate whenever we do get these rare cases of adults finding romance, because typically with anime, it's always, you know, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and you don't really expect much from their relationships itself. They're learning about love, not necessarily executing on love. But at the same time, there is an acknowledgement of sort of lack of anything to really chew on here. This is just kind of a, let's face it, a perfect waifu scenario. This is, Katase is super, super adorable, and we all love her. She's great. I love her character design. I think she's super cute. All the scenarios they put her in just makes her even more adorable. Yes, the pajamas, super cute. Love it. But honestly, it's really in the writing that doesn't really get me too much. The writer for this series is going for basic cuteness rather than just anything of substance. There's no punchlines here, there's no great comedy here, there's no shenanigans, there's no start, build up, and executing on some really great punchline. The writing here is very basic. And like I said earlier, it's technically just hitting on all the typical scenarios that you would get from a rom-com. Mostly all kind of centered around the contrast difference in their height. And that's where it sort of kind of leaves me pretty blah. Despite the fact that I want to love this show so much just to rub it in the face of all of the controversy around it, I'm not going to lie to myself and say this show is fantastic or anything. It's kind of one of those shows that you just kind of turn on and you relax and enjoy it, rather than it being something that's trying to do something incredible, or anything above average altogether. Which unfortunately, at the same time, kind of makes me wish that they would push the boundaries on this show, get a little bit more risque with it. Despite the controversy, I do kind of want it to push the boundaries and be a little more adult. But in the end, it kind of just takes the workforce environment and sort of just kind of inputs your typical middle schooler, high schooler, rom-com types of tropes. Now, my criticism aside, I have had some really good moments in the show already. Like I said, Katase is really, really cute, and whenever they kind of hone in on that aspect, it's really enjoyable. Yes, the acting like a cat on the sidewalk. I thought the whole doll scene was fantastic. The crane game and how every time he fails to get the doll, she makes this pouty face and he's like, I want to keep paying into this just to see this reaction. And then yes, the whole aspect of her taking the dolls home and how they look like them, how everything that happens sort of makes her think of him. Like yes, she can't change in front of the doll because she thinks of him. Or yes, when they kind of topple over on top of each other, she immediately gets this mental image of the two of them on top of each other. It is kind of nice to see that this isn't just a one-sided relationship. Yes, Shinozaki seems like he was in love at first sight. Well, at the same time, Katase seemingly took a little bit of time, but she really does like Shinozaki as well. And yes, in that whole scenario with the dolls, it's obvious that this girl is massively doki doki for him. So with it kind of acknowledging it so early on, it's kind of curious if this is just going to be the next, 8 episodes is nothing but will they, won't they, and just goofy scenarios with the two of them. Or if they're actually going to have this relationship actually go somewhere. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But who knows? It could surprise me. And there's also a lot of really charming moments too. I like the whole riding the person's on the hand and eating it kind of thing was just super cute. I think the weakness of this show is the side characters. Yes, I do like the manager. He seems like he's the big Cupid character that's trying to push the two of them together. You kind of had this one goofy scenario with Hayakawa, who is the childhood friend of Shinozaki, and how she had this Prince Charming at this place, and it turned out to be the manager, who's kind of dumb. But other than that, the side characters are very blah. I think the best kind of comparison for this show is something like My Senpai is Annoying. It's kind of the same situation. You have the contrasting relationship between a tall person and a short person. It's just the roles are reversed because in this situation, the senpai is short and the kohai is tall. But what made My Tiny Senpai so great was that it had great writing with the interaction of the characters. Nothing really felt tropish in their scenarios. And additionally, the side characters were just as equally amazing as the main couple. Whereas this one is very weak and just strictly the main couple. And yes, it doesn't mean that this show is bad just because another show is better. It just sort of gives you an idea of something that is well wrote versus something like this that is very surface level. Yes, in the end, My Tiny Senpai is great because Katase is great. But that doesn't make a good show overall. It just makes a show that you're going to turn on and smile whenever she's cute. And that's the unfortunate thing, because like I said earlier, I want to praise this show just to make certain people angry. But if that's something you're looking for, if something simple like this is what you're looking for, it's perfectly fine. And if you're just looking for something to unwind and just enjoy and smile and yes, perv out how great Katase is, go ahead. Because I'll be watching it right alongside you. But that's my first impressions of the biggest controversy of the summer 2023 anime season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. If you did, make sure that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the series so far if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate it, but it does. And I'll take care.